I'm not going to make any comments at all because we're getting short of time. I'm very happy to continue the meeting if everyone's happy to do so, but if you've got to shoot off, we fully understand. There are lots of questions I could put to all of our speakers, but I'd rather hand it over to the meeting. I'm just looking at some of the chat that has come through. Sarah's saying, Glyn, just for you, are there any tips for farmers in taking pictures and videos? Is that something that auctioneers could look at in future, of giving some guidance as to how that might work best? I don't expect you to answer it right away, but
yeah, there
just
is.
to take it on board.
I think we did a little video, and I think the video could be better. We put it on YouTube, just about things to do, the angles, and I think that's something that we're looking at going into the autumn period, to make another another YouTube video that people can make use of, to like video and take pictures, because as much as everybody wants their stock to be promoted as best they can, the photographs and videos have to be genuine, and if they're not, and the animals arrive at their new homes and that's not going to be a benefit to the online system.
Okay,
I agree with that, if I may. I agree with that, if I may. Yeah, we've sent out similar instruction ourselves for 15 to 30-second videos with almost a 360-degree view of the animal in that 30 seconds, with locomotion from the front and the rear, etc. And it was a very important part of giving buyers confidence. That's what it's all, as Clint said before, you've got to give the buyer confidence in what they're bidding on. So. Yeah,
wise words there, Ted. And we did get a thumbs up from Sarah, so I think she appreciates that, and that's something that us as auctioneers we can look to work on in the future. I'll come to you in a minute, Andrew. I'd just like to turn to Richard Betton from Upper Teesdale. Richard's heavily involved with another farmer support organisation, do a fantastic job up there, and Richard's made a couple of comments, one on the clash of dates. Is there anything you want to add to that, Richard?
Thank you, Adam. What really worries me in the Hill scenario is if all these sales are going to take much longer, just because of the throughput of stock in the back end, that we'll run out of time before winter. And the anxiety that there will be amongst hill farmers, if they have breeding stock and store stock left, that they need to move, well, sell off their farms before winter comes in. It's going to be huge pressure on them. And I'm also worried about a possible second spike of COVID-19. And I've been very interested to hear of any contingency planning that you've done for that. I mean, a lot of the experts are warning that this might happen at the end of August. I can't think of anything worse for all the auctioneers and auction companies that are trying to plan sales if that actually materialises. And if we lose a fortnight at the start of the breeding sale season, we're going to be chasing our tails for the rest of it. Can you give me any satisfaction? I know it's an impossible question. Just that you're bearing that in mind and trying to overcome it.
Any of our auctioneers like to have a stab at that one in terms of that backlog of sales? Is that related to the amount of time it will take to run sales, or the fact that perhaps we won't be able to get as many buys in there as we need? Does anybody want to make a comment from the auctioneering world?
Adam, Andrew Wright speaking. Just a personal comment. I think I understand Richard's concern. I think it's important that the auction companies talk to one another, that we try to stick to our normal sales pattern and normal sale times, not to clash with other sales, which is very important from everybody's point of view. I think there needs to be more discussion between the markets in particular areas. There are local associations that can be done through. Maybe Chris can comment on that, but I think it's very important that we don't clash with sales and times.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Yeah, wise words indeed. Any other auctioneers want to make a comment on planning those back-end sales and getting through them?
One of the things that we're in the middle of doing is turning our exhibition hall into a large sale ring, and I think that will give us another option of. It's an exhibition, but we're gonna have the ring in the side, in the middle, So we could probably have, we think, a couple hundred people socially distanced safely, and that's going to give us another arm to sell. It's going to be a sheep ring for the autumn time. So that's one thing that we've worked out. I think we all have a huge responsibility, because the second wave and another peak is a big worry and a risk. We all have a huge responsibility to continue to put all those biosecurity things in place in our personal hygiene and around our offices and on our farms, and when we come into the market, to not spread the virus. So that's we all have that responsibility to take it serious, because it's probably something I see that's people are starting to relax, and I think now is the big danger. People I think more rurally as well, we haven't really came into contact with the virus as much as in the cities, and we have to take it serious, and we have to not relax, but to keep washing our hands and keep sanitizing our hands for the next few weeks.
We have the ability to be our own worst enemies if we're not careful, and we have the ability to undo all the good work that Chris has done on our behalf. You know, I think he's strong on that matter.
I think Andrew Wright was alluding to that in a comment on the chat a little bit earlier about concern, you know, amongst auctions. I know with my little bit of personal knowledge that it is so difficult to police these situations, and if we're going to be frankly honest, there are situations that are happening in markets at the moment where perhaps social distancing isn't happening to as great a degree as it needs to. Is that something you were going to mention, Andrew?
Yes, it is. It's important within particular areas like Sir Cumbria that we do work closely together as companies. I know there's competition between each market, but we must have a similar approach to how we organise our sales and how we implement the restrictions that are in place. There's a lot of farmer pressure on us now to get into the markets. It comes back to the relaxations that's coming about. So we do need to be strong to hold our sales together, to keep that social distancing, and as Ted says, not to disrupt our sales by a situation arising which is out of our control, which comes back to Chris's concern, which he keeps telling his members that we must comply. And I think it's very important that we do get to that point where we are implementing the precautions and the guidance in a very similar fashion.
Thanks, Andrew. I mean, that to me gives a clear message that, you know, auctioneers must do whatever they can in terms of communicating with each other to try and work together as much as possible. And it's funny, you know, when times are tough, that's often when these sort of local conversations start to take place. There is a Cumbria Association of Livestock Auctioneers, but I don't think we've had a meeting for a while. It now might be an opportune time. But also it's clear that there's responsibility on our farmers as well, our buyers and sellers, that they've really got to take in mind their actions when they're in the auction, and that's the difficult message that we've perhaps got to get across. Anybody else want to make any comments or questions on this particular subject?
Adam, it's Chris. Just very quickly, I think that you know, at the very start we were challenged by governments to prove that we could socially distance, do a drop and go policy, and we proved we could. And we did that with the understanding of the farming community and the acceptance of the farming community that that's a system we have to implement. We as auctioneers now need the farming industry to stick with us and actually appreciate why we're saying what we're saying. And I fully understand it's difficult. It's really hard for someone to say, I'm sorry, you can't stand and sell your stock. But we need the help of the farming community. We can't do it as auctioneers on our own. And if we're tripped up too many times, the service won't be there, because it's been made very clear to me that we're not on trial, but we are nearly on trial. You know, if we're seen to be breaking the rules and risking the people that come to our marts, then another review will take place. So we need everyone's help. We need to work together with the farmers to make it work. But you know, I agree with Andrew. I agree with what you said. I think our regional associations, so the Livestock Auctioneers Association underneath us, there are regional ones. So there's Cumbria, there's Yorkshire, there's Northumberland, you get down into the Midlands, South Wales and Welsh borders. You know, they need to come together and they need to try and discuss sales, discuss timings, discuss dates. Because traditionally, as long as Adam was a boy, we've worked off, or certainly up in this end of the country, we've worked off Kelso Topsail date as the date that all the sales are worked from. And we have our days and we have our dates and no one ever changes. But now we've got a situation where we've got to find solutions to nearly impossible tasks. But we will do it, but we've just got to work together.
Chris, that's great. Thank you very much. And mirroring everyone else's comments, I know the work that you do at that high level, and I know how challenging that can be. And we thank you for your work that you do at that level. Stephen Ramsden, 2 questions for the panel, which not necessarily linked to this discussion. Are you going to hit us with a curveball, Stephen? You're on mute. You're still on mute, Stephen. You'll have to start again. There you go.
Right, thank you, Adam. Thanks for all the panel for putting this together. It's much appreciated, and we should really, as farmers, thank the auctioneering system and Chris Dodds in particular for putting the effort in to getting where we are today, and long may that continue for the benefit of the whole of our livestock industry. The 2 questions are, has anyone within our industry, as in this end of it, done a risk assessment in reference to the present agricultural bill going through Parliament and the possible negative attitude or negative outcome of Brexit? That's the first one. The second question is, and Ted knows my views on this, it was 18 months ago that I was at Skipton Market when a handful of ministry people came around to try and get round to doing electronic trace, not an identification of cattle. Can I ask whether we've gone any further with that particular thing? And possibly Corona has stalled that particular procedure for now, but that's quite important for both the auctioneering system and the farmers from the point of health and safety and the smooth running of your auctions.
I knew you'd put a curveball in, Stephen. Thank you. If I may, I'm going to head off the agriculture bill one because I think that's a subject in itself. And what I was going to say at the end of this meeting is that this is our first go at doing one of these. We have every intention in the farm network of continuing to do this sort of thing on a regular basis, even a weekly basis. And I think you've given us the basis for a really good discussion that next Thursday or the Thursday after, we'll come back at 12:30 and we'll discuss that very topic of the agriculture bill. And strength testing where we are as an industry. My colleague Veronica Waller does a lot of work. She's all over the agriculture bill. So if I can, I'm going to head that one off, and we'll come back to that another date. In terms of electronic ID, I know this is something Chris and the LAA are really heavily involved with and have been since the very start of the livestock information program back in the days when I was involved with LAA. Chris, is there anything you can very briefly add, just over a minute or two, about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's taken up a lot of our time. Pre-COVID, we were on every fortnight, full day on a Monday in London, on nothing but this. It's slightly stalled because of COVID, but the long and short of it is it's back now, moving. The long and short of it is what they're going to do is they're going to replace BCMS, ARAMS, pig database, and probably the equine, and put it all into one, so that farmers would be working from one portal and not multiple. Intention is for it all to go electronic. I would say that from the start of it, it's probably been delayed by 2 years. We're probably now looking at 21 for cattle, 22 for sheep. And all I would say is that if we try and look at the positive side of this, then there's fantastic opportunities for our industry. Every change always looks pretty uncomfortable and pretty difficult, but actually the reality is that we need to be positive, and I think there are massive bonus points in this. For me as an auctioneer, and probably for most of you as farmers, one of them is the 6-day standstill, which is something that we're taking forward as something that we should be reviewing when the chief vet knows where everything is, because we've got a proper tracing system. So all of those things are continually ongoing. In fact, I had a discussion this morning about the 6-day standstill. So yeah, it's still there. It is coming, but it's just timing. And COVID hasn't helped, to be perfectly honest. And very, very briefly, Adam, on the other one, my 8 or 10 meetings a week on COVID are now down to 4 or 5, well, probably 1 a day anyway, and probably 2 or 3 a day on Brexit again. So it is full steam ahead of Brexit. And I don't think any of us should be under any illusions that if there's not some sort of basic structure to an agreement by the end of this month, we will be leaving at the end of December with a no deal. So, please don't think that just because we've had an extension to the transition, that everything's going to be rosy. And there's a lot of hurdles. I sat on the telephone call this morning about trade agreements, free trade agreements with New Zealand and Australia. They're going through all the countries and seeing the advantage. And agriculture, without a doubt, in every single one is the most difficult, because there's no backbone of structure to it within the EU, really. I would say that we've got quite a lot of troubled water to get over in the next month or so.
It never rains, but it pours, eh? Chris?
Well, there is an appetite throughout Europe. If you look at people like myself, like yourselves, like the equivalent of DEFRA, the equivalent of the European Commission, we all want a deal. We all want a free trade agreement within agriculture. But it's political and it's bigger than just agriculture, and that makes it really hard. But the appetite, our French colleagues have not stopped buying our lamb. They want it, and they want to continue having it. So we need to keep pushing for a continued trade where we are, which is a free trade agreement. But we're on some fairly bumpy ground just now. That's all I'm trying to say, really.
Chrissy, appreciate those comments, and as I said, the work you do at that level, and it's good to share that briefly. We're not going to go any further with that one at this moment in time. In fact, what I'm going to do is call this meeting to a finish. As I said, it was the first one of these that we've tried, with every intention of continuing with them on a regular basis on topics that are of interest to the farming community. Really appreciate Chris, Ted and Glyn for doing this for us today and giving us your time. I'm sure I speak for everybody, all our farmers and all the other organisations who are on here, to say thank you very much indeed. And also to Carol for helping me administer the meeting. And finally, as I said, to Cumbria Community Foundation and the Prince's Countryside Fund, who look after the farmer network so very, very well. And without their support, we wouldn't be able to do this sort of stuff. So that's much appreciated as well. Can I say thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Watch this space. We'll come back and do another topic another day. And on behalf of the Farmer Network, very best of luck to you all. May we have fantastic sales this back end, and may we all be happy to get through them, and fingers crossed safely. So stay safe, everybody. Thank you.